All right, so I am here now with Theo Rossi. He has his new movie Escape the Field coming out on May 6th. How are you, man? I know we just caught up a little bit. You're from Texas. We got that
Yeah.
going.
Yeah. I'm loving it. It's been raining. We've been getting some good rain. So
Yeah.
the ponds are filling up in the back. Yeah, it's amazing. I one of my favorite lines about Texas that I learned when I moved here, and again, my wife being a lifelong Texan, was if you don't like the weather, wait 10 minutes. It just changes every 10 minutes.
It's crazy. It was a couple months ago. It was like 80 degrees one day here in
Yeah.
Dallas, and then all of a sudden it was like 20. It like just dropped.
Fascinating.
It's
fascinating. So I'm enjoying that part and every single other aspect that comes with it. It's a really good place, especially for the kids and stuff.
Yeah. Well, so you had Escape the Field, which is coming out May 6th. That was filmed up in Toronto, and it started, I think, or was it Toronto?
Hamilton, yeah, I guess. Sure,
Yeah.
right outside of Toronto, like 10 minutes out.
Yeah, so that started right, early part of the pandemic. What was
right
it?
away.
Yeah, what was it like, being up in Canada with their rules and filming something during the pandemic?
It was wild. I got to tell you, we were living in Texas. Obviously, we were in Texas, and we were kind of in this situation where we were in like a rental house, and we were, building where we were living now, and the pandemic hit, and like again, just like the rest of the entire world, I was like, what's going on? Like what's happening? We were all, again, we can all relive it a million times, but it was so like confusing in a way of like, we didn't know, right? When nobody knew what was happening. And especially because most of my family is in New York, and we're kind of devastated by it. So we were like, so then when I started thinking about work and how I feed my family and all that, I was like, I don't think this business is ever going to come back. Like that was my original thought process, was like, because logistically I was like, how does it come back? How does it work? How do you make this work? And a couple months into it, Emerson, the director, who's a really good friend of mine, we had done a project before, was like, we're going to do this film. It's going to be super contained. It's going to be in one location. It's going to be outdoors. The whole film is going to be outdoors. We're going to be in zones. We're going to get to this hotel in Hamilton, and we're going to be fully quarantined. And basically we're going to be there weeks before. We're going to be testing 5 days a week. And it was like, it was as much of my curiosity of wanting to do this. It was also like, this is going to kind of tell me if like, this is going to work.
Yeah.
If we're going to be able to build upon this. And especially it being a much smaller film that didn't have the luxury of an unlimited budget. There was like no money, and especially that at that time the Canadian rules were extremely strict and stuff like that. And we did it. And to be honest, I think it really facilitated the film. There was so much that was going on personally and behind the scenes that I think helped a film like this.
Yeah.
I looked at it like an experiment. I still do when people talk about it. I'm like, yeah, that was kind of like my first go at like, if this is going to happen again.
This is going to work. Well, and that's, you were up in Toronto, and now you're, you live in Texas, and obviously, like you said something really interesting that I just thought about. Is like, we don't want to revisit or like go over it a million different times of what happened, because I think everybody does that. But you have a really interesting perspective of how crazy, or not crazy, but how strict they were in Canada versus what it's been like here in Texas. What's that kind of been like?
Yeah. And then, I mean, and also you're talking about like, I have all my families in New York, so they were on the different things. I, at the time too, right around the field, I was also going to LA to do work and like, going in and out. I've seen it all. I mean, I've kind of been a part of all of them. I can't say which is right or wrong because I'm not a doctor and I don't know. I'm like water, whatever you tell me, I'm just going to go with the flow. So it's like, whatever needs to be done. I don't really have opinions on any of it. What do I know? I don't know. I live a really outdoor life here on the ranch. So I'm outside all the time. I don't know. I just know that it's wildly different everywhere I go. You know what I mean? And Canada at that time was wildly different than New York, and New York was wildly different than LA, and LA was wildly different than Texas. They were all wildly different. And I think that I'm fortunate that I got to experience all of them, because it gave me kind of my like well-rounded look of like, everything that was happening because nothing was similar. They were all very different.
Yeah. And I think that's the interesting thing that, I love talking to people like that who have had those experiences where it's like, I've only really ever seen Texas and like what we've done. And it's like, I can see on TV, like, oh, it looks like
totally different when you're there.
Yeah. Canada's got way locked down. So it's like, you had a way different perspective of, us here in Texas, but that's really
way different. Like I didn't even, when we were there, like I was actually kind of fearful even going out for walks because ultimately you were, you would be checked in on and stuff.
Yeah.
So it was just different. And again, and also remember, your response as someone who's the lead in a film, it's my responsibility to make sure that the film never gets shut down. Yeah. So I have to take that responsibility on to be as safe and protective as possible from something that I had no clue of, again, I'm the furthest thing from a doctor. So it's like, all I was concerned about was keeping everybody's job. Yeah. So I don't want to be the one who messes anything up. So, and again, I'm an isolationist by nature. So I was like, I just got to stay in a hotel all the time. Great. Yeah.
So, I mean, the movie, you guys are, kind of forced into this situation where you don't really know what's going on. You have these different objects that are, supposed to help you get out. And there's this force that is kind of preying upon you, being that lead and kind of putting yourself into that headspace. You talked about, Emerson, the director, is a friend of yours. What kind of drew you into that role? And what was it like kind of tackling a script like that?
Yeah, a couple of things drew me in. I mean, first and foremost, it was, like I said earlier, it was the experiment of going back to filming. I wasn't sure, it was the nature of the film. I had never done a film that all took place in one location. I've done films that had like 2 or 3. I've never done it where it's like, we're just shooting in a cornfield. And I was like, oh, okay, that's it. And so that was really interesting to me because I think it makes the acting amplified, where it's like you really are going to live and die on the words that are being said because there's not a lot else that's happening. I also love things that are bait and switch kind of a way of like, it's something that I always try to do with my characters is trick people, like where it's like, is it him? Yeah. Is it not?
What's happening with this guy?
Right. He always looks like he's a bad guy a lot, but now he's not, or he is, or he's a good guy, but he kind of looks like he should be a bad guy. So I love characters that kind of are ambiguous in all ways of like to the viewer. So that was another thing that drew me because Tyler was like, everyone you're watching this going, so, you can form your own opinion, but you might be wrong. And I love films like that. And again, Emerson, we're about to do another film together. I'm a giant fan of his. I'm a giant fan of how he is as a person and an artist. And he's one of those guys like, fortunately, a lot of the jobs that I've been doing recently where they're people who I'm very close with and ultimately whatever they do, I'll do. If they call me up and go, we want you here for one day, I'm like, all right.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
This is kind of a side question or something like that, but, you've done Sons of Anarchy, which a lot of people know you from, but you also were in that Luka Cage show, one of my favorite shows on Netflix. Yeah. They're obviously doing the Disney Plus stuff. Have you ever thought about going back, or what would you say to doing another Luka Cage within Netflix?
Shades is one of my favorite characters I've ever played. I have a lot of opinions on, not opinions. I have a lot of thoughts because I try not to have opinions. I have a lot of thoughts on how that would be done. Like I watch Disney Plus. I have 4 and 6-year-old kids. I can't believe when I see it on that streamer. I'm like, man, people like that's super violent. Like I'm like, because it's hyper violent and even Johnny Bernthal's rendition of the Punisher and like Charlie's Daredevil, like these are different shows than the current MCU. Mm-hmm. So they're more in line of like really what DC's doing, maybe in a way where or Moon Knight is the touch of what kind of is going on in that way of like that grittiness of whatever. So I know that they brought Kingpin back. And I know Charlie was back in the multiverse or in the Spider-Man thing as Daredevil. Mm-hmm. Not to ruin it for anyone, but
spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers around. I mean, it's the biggest movie ever, so I think that most people have seen it. here's what's crazy. We were about to do the third season before everything went down. So I already knew the arc of Shades. I knew what was going to happen to him. Obviously, that doesn't matter now. And that would never occur because it's all different people involved. So a really long answer to your question. Yeah, I have a lot of unresolved stuff. Like Juice, I was able to close the story on in Sons of Anarchy. Shades, I was not. I was waiting
to do more,
to resolve the story, which was going to happen at the end of season 3. So I'm looking forward to always I don't like when my characters just kind of float in the wind.
Yeah.
I want them to basically die.
I want an ending of some sort.
I want them to end. I want them to leave this earth. Ultimately.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, I really appreciate your time. Escape the Field comes out May 6th.
Yep.
I hope that Luka Cage comes back and that they bring you back as well. Cause hey, they have some freaking shows on Disney Plus now. They should absolutely do more to Luka Cage.
That'd be awesome.
Theo, man, I really appreciate your time, and
I really appreciate you, and enjoy Texas.
Yeah, you too, sir.
All right. Take it easy.
Bye-bye.